Heyo, Patrick, how you doing, bud?
Not too bad at all, buddy. So what have you for me today?
TLDR News is discussing why a ground invasion of Iran looks increasingly likely. And yeah, so Americans are absolutely casualty averse. So in World War II, the death toll on the planet was millions, right? And lots, hundreds of thousands of American soldiers. But now, if 2 or 3 soldiers get hit in a foreign country, the news goes wild, right? So we are absolutely averse to American casualty. But we will let this thing cook a little bit, and then we will see what this gentleman says. Here we go.
If you've read George Orwell's 1984, you might remember the book's 3 powerful superstates, covering today's US, Russia, and China. In the latest issue of our magazine, we're considering how these Orwellian spheres of influence are taking shape, and whether we're entering a new empire. That's just one of the 72 pages in the magazine, because as always, there's more to Too Long Than You'd Expect. Purchase your copy by clicking the link in the description. So, without further ado, the basic reason that boots on the ground now looks more likely than a week ago is that, as we mentioned in our previous video, Trump's 2 preferred outcomes, the first being a Venezuela-style outcome, where Ayatollah Ali Khamenei by a relatively pragmatic regime insider who's more keen on doing a deal, and the second being regime change via a protest, looked less likely than they did last week. On the question of a Venezuela-style outcome, bookie's current favourite to succeed Khamenei's son, Moshtaba, who has a reputation for being both more hardline and, unfortunately for ordinary Iranians, less competent, and will presumably be unwilling to do any sort of deal with the people who just assassinated his father.
Right. If he gets into power there, it's going to be more hardline, and the people of Iran are going to suffer, even more than they're already suffering at this point.
But and also this war will be dragged on longer.
Right, but the longer the war drags out, the more the people of Iran may step up and say, we're not doing this, dude. We're done. Like, we're not playing your game. So
this guy is also very, very hardline. I was watching another YouTuber doing a bit on him, and this guy lost a lot of members of his family. US strikes. So he's definitely going to be playing hardball against the US.
Yeah, he's not going to want to. But again, then he's just going to wear down the people. And this means more death, more destruction. More pragmatic type of government there, a more secular one might be better. And this all leads back to the Carter era, but that is a history lesson for another day.
Yeah, but as I was saying earlier to you when we were off mic, I put in both after, as they say, nation building after this war. I think the only way any force would be accepted in nation building in the Middle East would be an international force of some sort, more than a US force, less accepted to the population over there.
Right, but Spain's already saying they're not going to take any part of it.
There's a lot more countries in Europe.
Oh, I know, but it looks like there's a schism already.
Yeah, a lot of European countries are trying to ask the reason, what is this war about? Is it about freeing Iran, or is there another motive behind it? It seems to be no clear messaging behind this war.
So is somebody just exerting power so that they can have control of those levers? Is their thought process?
That's the problem. There's no clear message coming out of the Trump administration to tell the world, this is why we're doing this operation. This is why we're doing it. This is our objectives. This is, every time the US has done a major military operation in Afghanistan, Iraq, Vietnam, or any other war, there's always been a clear objective of why they're doing it.
Do you think this one's muddled?
It's very mixed messaging across the board from the Trump administration, from J.D. Vance all the way down. Seems to be every time a mic is put in front of them, there's a different reason given.
Well, I really want to see what Steve Miller has to say about this one, honestly, and I haven't found his opinion on this yet, because it seems no matter what anybody says, Steve Miller, when he says something, it seems to be more in line with what's actually going on. He seems to be a better barometer. He seems to have a much more clear message. So
yeah.
Moreover, on Wednesday morning, Israel's Foreign Minister, Israel Katz, announced that any new leader of the Iranian regime would be, quote, an unequivocal target for elimination, no matter what his name is, which does seem to functionally preclude a Venezuela-style outcome. So, on the question of protests instead, while the regime is still incredibly unpopular, Khamenei's death seems to have mobilized the minority of Iranians who still support it. And at least judging by videos on social media, the pro-regime protests, or at least the anti-Israel/America protests, look a lot bigger than the anti-regime ones.
Well, and that's interesting that he says they're a more minor faction, but they're more vocal. I don't know how he would know that, but I mean, that's interesting. But the problem is they still say death to the West, in some form or fashion.
Yes.
So if your basis of function is Israel is the little Satan and the United States is the big Satan, and we will do everything we can to not just inconvenience you, but kill you given the opportunity, it's really hard to negotiate with that, right? That's really hard to negotiate with.
There's going to be very hard one middle ground, if any middle ground found in this war.
Right. The only way is if a form of government comes in that is more amenable to having a meritocracy as opposed to a theocracy, right? If there's a meritocracy there, the Persian people, the Iranians, the Kurds, everybody who lives there can have a much better life,
Yeah.
Right. Because they're not doing great right now. It's either, boots on the neck or boots on the ground. Right. And that's not the combination.
Which you can say that about dozens of different countries all over the world.
But they don't control the amount of energy production in the world or the ability to threaten it like they do.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. They don't control it as much as they say dinosaur juice. Yeah.
Dinosaur juice. Nice.
But like if it's all about freeing people, you could think of dozens of African countries that could do with this kind of freedom as well. But the US are not sending a couple of task forces over there anytime soon.
Well, I think this might also have to do with Monroe Doctrine type stuff as well.
I think it's about backing up Israel as well. Israel wanted, one of their major threats taken off the board.
One of the things I was watching before we came online was somebody was saying they were hollering like from the rafters. He's just doing this because the Epstein files. This is billions of dollars of effort. I don't know that billions of dollars of effort is what you do to hide something like that.
I don't think it could be a lot of different factors probably playing into this war. Is that one of the factors? Who knows? At the end of the day, the problem is it's the mission behind this war that people can't seem to get behind. Even the latest opinion polls in the United States, when it comes to this war, very few people seem to support it. Less than 25.
Very few, right? But it's what 46 or 47%. So that's only 180 million people. Yeah. I think it's a good idea.
By the way, when we shot that quote, by the way, that was on the Republican side. You know what I mean?
The Republican side, MAGAs were like 90% for it, and then there was a smaller percentage, like 77%. But then the Democrats are only at 45 or 46% approval.
Okay, but when you look at the rest of the world, if we look at Europe and everyone else, everyone's saying there's bigger issues going on in the world besides why are you attacking Iran? There
was also a vote in the Senate on the war powers, and it was 53 to 47. It was shot down. So Trump is not going to have to seek congressional approval for whatever he's doing right now. And unless that changes, then he's going to have free reign for the next 4 or 5 weeks, at least, that he said he was going to be conducting operations.
This is definitely not going to be over in 4 or 5 weeks. I think that we can all kind of agree on that. I don't see this war ending that quickly.
This thing is super kinetic. There might be one straw that breaks the camel's back, and then it's done. Or, like you said, it could drag on.
No one knows.
Boots go on the ground. It's going to be a long business, right? Unless there's something organic that develops in Iran, then this is going to be. It's going to take a hot minute because expeditionary forces take a hot minute to get ready, get hot, and get going.
But I don't think Trump quite realizes both sides in Iran. Everybody. Most normal citizens in Iran want freedom.
Yes.
We've seen that for tens of thousands. But when they're interviewed themselves, they want to get their own freedom.
Yes. They don't want a handout. They want to get it. But if you're being crushed by secret police and a theocracy, the odds of that happening are pretty damn low, especially if they control all the levers of power.
That's true.
All right, let's get back to this guy.
It's obviously very difficult to properly gauge sentiment inside Iran. There have been numerous reports that the severity of the ongoing bombing campaign already included strikes on a primary school and a hospital, has stoked anti-American and anti-Israel sentiment, which might plausibly make ordinary Iranians less likely to heed Trump's process. Again,
yeah, that makes a lot of sense. A lot of that can be colored. We talked about it on our last episode where we don't know what happened with those precision strikes. They were either thrown off. Pretty sure the United States is not specifically targeting schools and hospitals. I think there was some other kind of target there.
Probably, but back I remember during the Iraq war, when certain officers took shelter, the trigger was still pulled. Unfortunately, when it comes to war, a lot of these guys would hide behind civilians.
Conditioned to understand the Geneva Convention. In fact, on your military ID card, if you're in NATO, it says what Geneva Convention class you are.
Yeah,
and
but
they don't follow those rules.
It wouldn't be the
first in the game.
It wouldn't be the first time a Western power has pulled the trigger and taken out a guy and taken out civilians at the same time. That's just the nature of war, unfortunately.
Well, the thing is they'll run into a mosque, and then because of rules of engagement, you can't shoot them there. Then they'll just come out later and do naughty things, you know?
Yeah, well,
So,
we saw that in Palestine where there was a couple of mosques taken out because certain targets were inside there. But that's the nature of war, unfortunately.
yeah, if bad guys
You know,
hide in places, then bad guys get shot
and unfortunately, it's always the civilians who pay for the ultimate cost.
every
You
time.
know,
Every time.
yeah.
Maybe it's too early to be pessimistic. Trump has advised that protesters wait until the war is over before trying their luck. And it's worth noting that if Mushtaba does indeed succeed his father, in the medium to long term, this will probably make the regime's demise more likely, given Mushtaba's apparent incompetence and the fact that things didn't end too brilliantly for Iran's last hereditary leader. Nonetheless, it's at least true that neither a more pliant successor nor a protest-induced regime change look likely in the short term. So given no...
Yeah, he's right. Right now, it's again fog of war, right? We're fog of war, and the people on the ground and the civilian population have a lot going on. It's real busy.
Clean outcome looks immediately forthcoming. In the past couple of days, journalists have started asking the administration how long they expect the war to go on for. This was a question put to Hegseth on Monday, and this was his response.
No, but we're not going to go into the exercise of what not do.
Right. We're not going to tell bad guys our plans. That just makes sense.
One of those fallacies time that department or presidents or others should tell the American people and our enemies, by the way, here's exactly what exactly how long we'll go, here's exactly how far we'll go, here's what we're willing to not do. President Trump ensures that our enemies understand go as far as we need to go. Enhanced American interest. We're not dumb about it. We don't have to roll 200,000 people for 20.
Hegseth didn't give a specific time frame.
He was referring to Afghanistan and Iraq there. Hundreds of thousands of soldiers have cycled through their undeployments over the years, to include NATO troops as well.
A lot of NATO troops were there as well.
Working with the military, we worked with a lot of NATO troops and did a lot of joint operations.
Continue until the US executed what it needs. This puts pressure on the administration to more clearly articulate its military objectives in Iran.
You said that they have not quite articulated that to your standard, I guess?
No, not their military objectives, but what is the reason behind this war? They can get the mission right. They can sell.
From what I understand, it's an enriched uranium problem because no country that has gotten enriched uranium to the point where they have it has not developed a nuclear attack type program.
Yes.
Right. And then on top of that, the regime is definitely boots on the neck to its people. I mean, it's a really bad place where they're doing bad things.
Do you see other NATO members getting behind us?
Eventually, they're going to have to. Like, they're not going to be spoiled for choice here. They're going to have to either say, yes, we support this, or no, we don't. And it might cause division within the EU as well.
I know most NATO members have turned around and saying, we want no part of this. A lot of them have said it already.
Okay, and none of them have an expeditionary force that can on its own go to Iran and make...
Yeah, but what I'm saying is they're not willing to put boots in the ground this time around.
You don't think the US is going to do that?
At the moment, a lot of them are saying, no, we don't want anything to do with this. We already have our own issues.
Right, and everybody in the G20 is casualty averse. Yeah, I get it.
And Trump duly laid them out in a press conference a day later. According to Trump, the US has 4 military objectives in Iran: destroy Iran's missile capabilities, annihilate their navy, ensure Iran can never obtain a nuclear weapon, and ensure that Iran cannot arm, direct proxies inside Iran.
That's an important one because all their proxies have caused massive issues.
No. See the way the mission is nice and clear right there. What they should do is keep hammering those points home instead of jumping all over the place like I've seen in interviews. If they can stick to that messaging, I don't think anyone would have a problem.
You don't think that's kind of a counter intel thing to keep people unsteady as to what exactly they're going to do to achieve their goals? I think
it's the fact that these spokespeople, like I've seen Christy Nolan was recently got fired. Their messaging, the way their ability to put across a message to the general public seems to be, I think Trump is kind of realizing that himself, that he needs to get better guys to hammer home, this is the message, here's our bullet points, this is what we're doing, and everyone's singing off the same hymn sheet.
That would be the best. Well, I hope you got a good severance package.
These are some pretty maximalist objectives. Taken together, they basically imply Iran's total demilitarization will probably require the Iranian regime to essentially surrender. The problem here, however, is that history suggests that air power alone isn't sufficient for such
It is never sufficient. Without boots on the ground, you don't get to exert the control unless you kill everyone, and then that's too much.
And the boots on the ground is going to be that's
disaster.
I think that's where, I think the US has learned their lessons by putting boots in the ground in the Middle Eastern countries, where the population is not such big fans of them. Has not worked well in the
past. But what happens over time is the rules of engagement change to make it so that Marines and soldiers on the ground can no longer achieve the objectives that they're told to achieve.
Yeah.
Because we try to be nicer and be more forgiving, and then it just blows up in our face.
You have to remember that the US hasn't the best operational successes when it comes to nation building overall.
Right, the track record's not great. I feel you.
Objectives. Air campaigns often achieve impressive tactical success, but there aren't many examples of air campaigns achieving big strategic objectives. In fact, according to historian Robert Pape, who wrote his seminal book on the topic called Bombing to Win, air power alone has never toppled a government, even when paired with intelligence, and very rarely achieves meaningful political change. Perhaps the closest parallel to today is the 1991 air campaign against Saddam Hussein's Iraq. Much like today, at the time, George H.W. Bush was calling on the Iraqi people to rise up and encouraging Kurdish rebels in the north. But a brief uprising was brutally repressed. The Iraqi regime survived, and Saddam was only ousted when the US staged a ground invasion. The US and Israel already seem to have tacitly realized this, which is why they're apparently trying to convince Kurdish militias in Iraq to stage a ground invasion.
Right, and some of the Kurdish have done that. They haven't done it anywhere near Tehran. What happens if we give the Kurds all the guns to do the things? Then the Kurds are in charge, right? Okay, then what?
Are you going to end up with another Afghanistan situation where you arm the Taliban against the Soviets and they suddenly turned around and that bitch in the
kicking the can down the road, and then we get some other unreasonable set of people in charge, right?
Yeah.
Right? It's like the people that can take it aren't the ones you necessarily want to be running it.
And there was even a report in a Saudi news outlet earlier this week that Israeli special forces entered Iran on night. But if neither Kurdish militias nor Israeli special forces prove sufficient,
and they won't. You need an expeditionary force to exert the will.
Yeah.
You don't have the leverage. You don't have the ability to immediately affect it on the ground, right?
Exactly. You have to put boots on the ground.
US ground invasion will probably emerge as the only way for Trump to achieve his objectives. Now, to be clear, we're not saying that this is definitely going to happen, and the odds are still probably below 50%. It's still very possible that the regime crumbles, is overthrown, or that Iran descends into a messy civil war. It's also worth noting that Iran is incredibly difficult to invade. After all, it's a
oh my God, the terrain dictates there. It is almost impossible to get in there.
It'll be an absolute nightmare for any ground force inside there.
For sure.
All through, by the way, if anyone doesn't believe me, just look through the history of that region. A lot of bigger empires. It's an absolute nightmare.
Yeah, it's going to be pretty bad if we get in there like that. But I guess the best you can hope for is that internal strife causes a regime change. So.
Yes, and what kind of regime will rise up? Oh, this quagmire is a question that everyone's asking themselves.
Well, hopefully a more secular style government that isn't a theocracy, that has control over everything to include corporations, military, and secret police. The conversation soldiers will talk to you if you protest, and they'll talk to you with, bullets.
I think it would be interesting would other NATO members be willing to commit forces in there, though.
I don't know what happens once an expeditionary force hits. And they're saying some special forces went in. A team of 12 or 13 guys isn't going to do the thing. This is not Venezuela.
In order to hold and occupy a country like this, you're going to need tens of thousands of troops. And it's going to be an absolute grind fest. It'll be worse than Afghanistan and Iraq combined, even for any expeditionary force going in there.
Right, but if there's a more clear and concise goal set, I think it could function as long as the ROE doesn't change. Go ahead.
It's the hearts and minds of the nation you have to win over as well.
Yeah, you can't just put a gun to their head after the boot to the neck and say, now we're right. Yeah.
It doesn't seem to work out well through history.
Country covered in mountains. It's also possible that the regime survives, but Trump just decides to withdraw anyway and blame it on ordinary Iranians for not protesting hard enough. Nonetheless, the odds of boots on the ground are at least higher than they were a few weeks ago, and it would be a remarkable U-turn from a president who rose to political prominence, criticizing forever wars. As we mentioned earlier, the latest issue of our magazine, Too Long, is out very soon.
That's actually a really good point he just made there.
Right, and that's actually a good little magazine too. Fairly concise. It's a good deal. Anyway, go ahead.
But this is a president who criticized constantly forever wars. So much so that he signed a deal with Afghanistan that pulled forces out and so on. He rightly so that the US can't be involved in forever wars like this.
No, you
They're not good at it. Yeah, it just doesn't work for you.
All right. You got anything left for the good of the people there, Patrick?
No, I'm just saying it would be interesting. What's your own opinion? Do you think the US will go in there with ground forces?
I'm going to say it's too early to say, but if they do, they had better have clear objectives. And then once they achieve those objectives, we need to step it back and send in the negotiating teams with the support of the EU to make a better, or attempt to make it so that your Iranian citizen or Iranian citizen can have a better life. Right?
But it doesn't look like, but without you, say, can the US do it on their own without, by the way it just looks at the moment, without support of its NATO allies?
If you watch Habitual Line Crossers, the United States versus Iran, came out about a year ago, he's pretty sure we can. And if Ethan says that that's a great possibility, I'm probably going to fall on the side of HLC.
Yeah, but do you think, but you personally think the US is ready for another prolonged forever war?
I don't know that it would be a forever war. That's the problem. Like, again, with clear objectives, I think they can do something. As long as they go in, achieve the objectives, and then draw out immediately. You figure out what you're going to do, and if you keep screwing it up, then we'll come back. So here are the consequences for the action. They've been exacted. We leave. We don't set up a bunch of bases and then continue to send our children into the meat grinder.
But this was the objective, by the way, when they came to Iraq.
And all we can do is hope they learned, right?
He said that was the clear objective of the time, is you go in, overthrow Saddam Hussein, put in a new government, build up the nation, and everyone goes about their business. But that lasted for years. That's what I'm saying. These are clear objectives. But the reality is, it takes a long time to rebuild a nation and change the government, put on new infrastructure in place, put new police forces. Right. You know, as you said, dismantle the secret police and all the different actors in there. All this takes time and a lot of money and a lot of resources. As I say, I'm just wondering, as your man said there, I think it's definitely 50-50 shot that US will put in boots on the ground, definitely. Say even more than 50%. I think eventually there will be a force sent in there.
It's possible. And it also depends on what happens with the Kurds and how many Kurds get involved. And there's a lot of moving parts.
As you say, but the best scenario would be a natural uprising of people coming out in the streets, overthrowing their overlords, and that usually ends in a civil war 9 times out of 10.
Yeah, for sure.
And eventually get some other nation out.
All right, for Patrick McCallum, I am Alex Johansson. Like the like, ring the bell, subscribe, and help us beat the algorithm. We're the A&P Gents, and we are out.